Well, now, that ain't exactly ideal, is it? Well, don't you worry. We'll get there in the end. Yes, we'll get there in the end. Hopefully the stream quality will be a bit higher today. Now we're having some trouble with the links today, but bear with me for a second here. Sometimes it's all a little bit new, you know? Yeah, something like that. So there we go for that. Whoops. Whoops. Double whoops. Don't worry, none of that's fragile, as it were. Yeah. So I could smash that as much as I want. Nothing will break. Yeah. And we're gonna do this. Hey there. Hi there. Hyde here. Good to see you in chat in there, yeah. Yeah, we're going to be doing another Side Pocket Zatsudan stream. Woo! Yay! Clap, 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 clap. I know some of you might have wanted a Minesweeper Zatsudan, but we're not going to be doing that today, no. No, I'm sorry. That's just not in the cards right now. We're going to be continuing on with our one pocket game, Zatsudan. And today, it might be a short stream, if I'm being honest with you. I haven't been able to prepare too many topics, as it were. Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but sometimes you don't get the time in the week to prepare the topics that you really want to prepare. And that's... ooh, that was really bad. That tends to happen at the worst possible times, doesn't it? Yeah. So, it's not like I don't have any topics prepared for today. I do. I wouldn't show up unprepared. That is not the Hyde way. However, the topics I do have prepared for today are, well, we'll call them less than fresh. that just, that might be the nicest way of saying it. But they are topics, for the most part, that I have prepared, I don't know, weeks ago now, as it were. And that just... that's just gonna have to be how it is, right? Yeah. I do have a couple of topics that I prepared this week, and maybe they will be of interest to you, but maybe they won't. And that's fine too. So we're gonna start with my recent YouTube short experiences, I think. Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna start with. And some of you who aren't content creators You might not enjoy this topic, and I do apologize for that. Like, maybe I'm getting too far in the weeds with it. But I think it's nice to give you an update on the kind of YouTube experiences, as it were, right? Give you a peek behind the curtain. So, what I've been trying to do as of late is add some more flair to my YouTube shorts. And I think I've been pretty successful with it. But at the same time, I think I still have a lot to learn for YouTube shorts, right? So, the big short was, I guess, yesterday's short. And it ended up getting around 1,500 views, 50 likes, and I got around, I don't know, 4 new subscribers. If you're in the audience and you're one of the new subscribers, thank you for joining me. I always appreciate seeing new faces. It's almost as nice as seeing the old ones. I do apologize, but there's something nice about seeing familiar faces, isn't there? Yeah, I think so. I think this will be okay. Yep, we got it, right like that. So I was not expecting 1,500 views on the short that I put out yesterday. I thought it would be an interesting short because there is this sort of dichotomous nature to it, right? Like, it starts out with me in a nihilistic fugue state, as it were. Some kind of fatalistic, I want to give up kind of state, you know? I'm sure a lot of people have been there. You may have been there sometime yourself, and that's perfectly fine, right? There's nothing wrong with being fatalistic. It's just a matter of... I hate these long shots because you can't get the... yeah, that might work. There's nothing wrong with it because we've all been there. Yeah, we all know that sometimes things don't go as planned, and that's okay, right? It's when you start getting into... Oh, that was bad. It's when you start giving up that's the real problem, I think. Yeah. I think we can sneak this one on the side. It's when you give up and you start saying, I can't do anything. I might as well give up. I might as well curl up into a fatalistic ball in a fetal position in my bed, hugging my pillow. And bonus points if your pillow happens to have, I don't know, an anime character on it. Yeah, if you have a waifu pillow, that's perfectly okay with Hyde, right? Oh, I don't know how to do this one. This one's gonna be tough, right? Maybe we go for this 4 ball over here. That looks about right, right? We're gonna hit the side of it one way or the other. But yeah, bonus points if you have... Oh, we are so close. An anime character on it. But it's when you do give up that there is no hope for things getting better. I know that sounds terrible, but it's the truth, isn't it? Because if you don't give up, things can always get better. Yeah, like, the most unexpected things happen. And that was kind of the point of the short that I put out yesterday, as it were. I wanted to highlight this dichotomy between the human spirit when you are giving up and when you're, I don't know, persevering despite the negative experience of it all. Yeah. And I kind of hoped that that was what I was portraying, and I think it worked. I think it did. I think the audience responded to it, and we got exactly what we wanted out of it. I was not expecting 1,500 views. That was more than I ever wanted. more than I ever expected from a short like that. But at the same time, it's within the expectable range. We got a 1-up there. 1-ups are pretty rare in this game. I don't know if I'm happy for that, because that means I'm going to have to very much try to not lose this game. It would have been easier to just give up, to let the fatalistic urges win in this case. But Hyde cannot do that now that he got the 1-up, right? Oh. Now, I will repeat, this is the second time on my stream that I have been playing Side Pocket. But that doesn't mean it's only the second time I've ever played Side Pocket. I played Side Pocket a lot as a kid. It's one of the few games that I could actually play as a kid. It didn't require any kind of real-time strategy, or any kind of turn-based strategy. It didn't really require much thinking at all. You just had to get the angles right. And so long as you got the angles right, you were pretty much fine. But, yeah. It's been a while since I've last played. Like, I think last week was the last time I played a Switch game. No, that's not true. No, that isn't true at all. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers out there might remember, or might have seen, that I had a sort of test stream early in the week, and I was playing Joe and Mac 2. I didn't have any, I didn't have my mic on at the time, but I did play it, and the fact that I did play it means that I did play a Switch game earlier in the week. Yeah. So I did, and I can't lie about that. I did do that. Oh, this is a really terrible shot, isn't it? Like, what do we do here? Do we try and bank a shot? I think we go for the 3, and we try to bank it in that corner there. But we have to be very dead center here, otherwise we're gonna bank it off the wall. And, I think that might work. We're probably gonna overshoot it. No, we got it. We got it just fine. Now we're gonna try for the 6 ball, I think. So we want to hit the top of the 9 ball here into the 6 ball. Yeah, like this. Not quite like that. Anyway, I was thinking about playing Joe and Mac instead of doing a Zatsu today, but I realized people probably want my Zatsu content, even if I'm not too happy with what I've prepared for this week. It may be a short stream, but I think we're gonna get through it just fine. It'll probably end up being close to an hour. I do apologize if it's a bit shorter, but you know, that's sometimes the content that you have. I don't want to force content. I know a lot of people say that you should stream regularly, and there is some kind of value to that. There is the value of expectability, as it were. And I get it. If you're expectable, that means your content will be recognizable. You don't even have to put out schedules, right? Like, Hyde never puts out schedules. He puts out content when he feels like it. And he streams when he feels like it. And that's very true for that test stream that I had this week as well. That was unscheduled, but I'm messing around with, well, that's like a perfect shot, isn't it? I'm messing around with all the new toys that I have, as it were. Yeah. I know a lot of people, they say that you should buy high quality equipment, like high quality microphones, high quality models, high quality everything. Like, they just want you to go out and spend thousands of dollars on your equipment, your computer, your capture card. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think that's how it should be done. I understand thought process. Like, if you think that there's a good chance that you'll be streaming a lot, maybe you should do it. Like, if you were a former streamer, oh, we lost, and you're thinking about moving into PNG tubing or VTubing, then I could understand it, right? Like, you might have some of that equipment already, and what you really need is a high quality model, or a high quality webcam for live 2D tracking. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend against that. And I know I'm not much of an authority. I've only been streaming for, what, about 6 months now, right? And I'm barely scratching the surface of it all. Like, if you look at my content, I've barely put out anything to do with, I don't know, SNES content, or any kind of games, really. Mostly I've been doing indie games. And that's really what I prefer to do. I really like seeing, the visions of creators. Yeah, I really like seeing what they envision for their own games and their universes that they create. It's kind of like reading a story, in a way, or watching a new anime series. You get this unpolluted vision of a completely new world. And Hyde really enjoys that. But he understands that, oh, I don't know what to do here. What do I do? I think if we hit this, like this, we might get that 5-ball. Yeah, let's try that. Nope. No, we were a little bit off. Yeah. It's kind of like a new world, right? You're entering into the mind of a creative person. And usually you don't really get the opportunity to do that with AAA games. So I pretend that AAA games don't really exist, as it were. Although, I guess technically this would count as, Data East was a big publisher back in the day. A lot of games on the Nintendo online shop or subscription service are from Data East. So I guess it is technically a AAA, or was a AAA at one point. We're gonna have to be very clever with this shot, aren't we? I think that might do it. Nope. No, it did not do it. But yeah. These SNES games come from a different era. An era when Hyde himself was very, very young. And he's an old man. So that gives you a little bit of a insight into things, I guess? Right? But yeah. It's perfectly fine, right? Oh, this one again. I think our problem with this one for the last time was we were too extreme with the angles. We need to be slower on the cue, but we need to have a less extreme angle. We were close there. I think we were very close. Anyway, Data East also published Joe and Mac, which was the vertical stream game that I was testing out earlier this week. I haven't actually played Joe and Mac to completion yet. No. In fact, it was, I guess, in the last couple weeks that I first played it at all. And I wasn't really going to stream it, but it's kind of a very interesting game, isn't it? I think it was originally titled Caveman Ninja, and that got localized to Joe and Mac for whatever reason. It's very strange how localizations happen, and you change the names of things until they're very unrecognizable. as it were. Yeah. But I've never played a Joe and Mac game. Oh, we do not have a good shot here. I think we're just gonna smack it right into the middle of these balls. Yeah, right like that. And it somehow worked out for us. That sometimes happens on the pool table as well. Like in real life. You don't know what to do, so you just hit the balls and hope for the best. You pray for the best. I think we could do that again, and we might be able to get that 3 ball. But... might be tough. Yeah, we'll give it a try. A little bit like that. We're gonna hit that 1 ball. I don't know if we're gonna... No, we didn't hit the 3 ball at all. Oh well. Anyway. These publishers, Data East, they were pretty big. Oh, that was bad. We should have not have gotten that 2 ball there. That was, complete luck. We were not aiming for that at all. We can get this 8 ball. Right like that. Anyway, I was not planning on streaming Joe and Mac, but I saw, if you're a Hololive fan, you might have seen Bay, Hakos Bay, yeah, the Chaos Rat. She did a vertical stream, and I was very interested in vertical streams, because if you don't know my channel, I have said that I want to be the #1 V-shorter. Which is a ridiculous goal, because there is no such thing as a V-shorter, right? Yeah, as far as I know, there is no such thing as a V-shorter. There are VTubers, and there are people streaming on Twitch who call themselves VTubers, which doesn't make sense to me because they're on Twitch, right? And the tube comes from YouTube here. Unless you go to other sites. Anyway, there is a bit of strangeness to the naming sense of that. But Hyde is okay with that. Like, you can't really... Like, it's all taxonomical in the end, isn't it? And every taxonomical indicator is sort of... Oh, that was a bad shot. It is sort of arbitrary, right? Yeah, Hyde thinks most things in life are arbitrary. There's very little that is... Can we go over this way? Yes, thank you. A little bit more this way. We really want to just love tap this 1 ball. Not enough love tap. It is all arbitrary in the end because it all comes down to the subjective experiences. But I think there are some intersubjective qualities that we do really need to consider. Which sounds like word salad, but I assure you, it isn't. Those words mean something. So long as you think they mean something, they mean something. I haven't actually gotten into any of the pre-written topics yet. No, I have not done that. We have just been waffling since the start here. And that's fine, because we still have plenty of time, right? Like, time really goes quickly when you're waffling like this and you don't know what to say. It's a very strange feeling if you've never streamed. I would recommend that if you've never streamed, and you think you might be interested, like, give it a try. You'll be surprised about how difficult it really is. Hyde was, right? Like, Hyde thought it would be very easy to be a streamer when he first started out. He thought it would be very easy to just ramble on about nothing and everything. And he quickly learned that's not the case. No. The case is, it's a very tough job. Or hobby, in my case. It's not really a job, I'm not getting any money from this. So, it really doesn't count as a job for me. There are people of similar sizes out there who do make money from this. And Hyde understands that too. They're making like pennies a day. And that kind of sucks. I understand, yeah, less than ideal, as it were. We got one of those in. That ain't bad. I still haven't gotten both of those in. Not in any game I've played in recent memory. Yeah, there are people who do actually make money from Twitch, mostly. Not from YouTube. For YouTube, you've got to have like 500 subscribers and a ridiculous number of watch hours that are unrelated to shorts. And if you pay attention to my channel, then you know that most of my watch hours probably come from shorts. And I think there is a trade-off there, right? Like, if you're streaming on YouTube, and most of your watch hours come from VODs or from the stream itself, you're probably sitting pretty. Sitting pretty, as it were. But, when you're doing pre-recorded content, you have to be a bit more careful, I think. People aren't going to watch an hour video unedited with you, I don't know, failing to club a dinosaur to death, as it were. That's more of a stream content thing, right? Like, they'll watch that live, but when it comes to a video, I think they're expecting something completely different. And that's fine. You just have to tailor your videos to the expectations of, the viewer or the audience that you're trying to target. Yeah, I'm very much in the weeds here, aren't I? With behind the curtains YouTube talks. But it's very interesting to me, right? Like, some people do crossword puzzles, and that's how they get their mental stimulation for the week. Not Hyde. Not Hyde. Hyde can't do crossword puzzles. He can't do Sudoku. Sudoku. You can't do seppuku. No. The nines get him every time, but he can't do those kind of things. If anything, he can do like anagram solvers or jumbles, like word jumbles. Yeah. That's about it. That's the extent of what Hyde can do for a creative, mind-stimulating evening. Some people, I know a lot of people who do jigsaw puzzles, like in real life, and they buy like the 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, and they put it together over the course of several weeks, and then they put glue over the top and they frame it, and you end up with this really beautiful picture, and you can see each individual line where the jigsaw puzzle pieces meet. But I could never sit down. I don't have the patience for that. Yeah. So, I kind of have to play to my own strengths here, and not to my weaknesses, as it were. I guess we're going to go into our first topic of the night, and this one's going to be very short. I do apologize. Again, I put these together like last minute. Some of these might be from months prior, but Hyde will give it his best go. Yeah, his best go. Delicious water. Yeah, so the first topic of the night is a horror movie I used to watch a lot as a kid. So when I was in high school, the horror movie Jeepers Creepers came out. I don't know if any of you have ever seen Jeepers Creepers, but it's a title taken from a song from like the 1950s. And it goes, Jeepers Creepers, Where'd you get those peepers? Cheapers, creepers, where'd you get those eyes? Yeah. It's a very fitting song, and I don't know if they wrote the screenplay based off of the song, or if they just added it in, but it's very fitting for the movie itself. If you've never seen the movie series, and you don't want to hear the spoilers for the movie, I'm only going to be talking about the beginning of the movie here. But if you don't want to hear that, close your ears for about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, and then get back to me. Yeah. Okay, you good? Yeah, probably. You're not gonna be able to say anything. So in the beginning of this movie, the movie monster, which is a leathery, bat-winged demon, is driving a truck across a highway in America. I know, very ridiculous. It gets even more ridiculous, because the license plate of that truck is a custom license plate that says, "Be eating you." And the main characters of the film, one's a man, one's a woman, they're brother and sister in the film, but the main characters are arguing over whether it says beating you, as in you like pummeling you, or whether it says be eating you. And it's only later in the film that you realize it definitely meant be eating you, because the demon thing actually eats people. So, I don't know if you know anything about US license plates, but to get a custom license plate in the USA, you have to submit a form, and you have to pay, I don't know, it used to be $50 to get one printed out. It might be more nowadays, I haven't checked. It probably is a lot more. Like, costs across the board have gone up, who knows how much, in recent years. They say about 25% inflation rate. Hyde doesn't buy that. Hyde thinks it's probably closer to a 50% inflation rate on select items. Anyway, I want you to consider that. There is a demon driving around a truck with a custom license plate. That means that demon had to submit a form to have this custom license plate printed, and once it was printed, he had to go, I don't know, pick it up from a PO box maybe, and he then had to pay $50 for this custom license plate itself. Like, it's very ridiculous, isn't it? I believe it's also an annual fee too, but maybe that depends on the state. I don't think there's an annual fee in my state, so it might be state dependent. I think you pay once and your customized plate is registered to you. There is definitely a registration fee for like state inspections. So if you live in a state that has car inspections, you do have to pay an inspection fee annually. Just make sure your vehicle is roadworthy. There are plenty of states out there which do not do that. I know Ohio is one of them, and Ohio is probably one of the worst states in the United States for cars on the road. You can get away driving, wow, that was a bad shot. Anything that can actually drive on the road is street legal, basically, in Ohio. But yeah, I just imagine like this demon in a trench coat trying to go to the DMV in some state and filling out these forms for his custom license plate that says "Be eating you," and that always makes me laugh, because obviously it's supposed to be subtle foreshadowing, right? Like, you're not supposed to take it seriously, you're not supposed to think, yeah, like he's waiting in line with the rest of them for hours. Oh, Diana, you've definitely been to the DMV recently, haven't you? Being a demon. Well, yeah, he'd fit right in. He'd fit right in with the rest of the DMV workers. Yeah. It's kind of a ridiculous image, because there is no way that this demon should have been able to have a custom license plate. Like, I'll give it to him that he has a car, right? He could have stolen the car from one of his victims. More than I preferred, yeah. Been there. It's always a hassle to try and get them to change anything on your license too, right? Like if you're an organ donor and you suddenly want to stop being an organ donor, that's a hassle. At least in my state, you can't really do that too well. Or if here's an example that is purely hypothetical. Say that you have the same height from your learner's permit on your driver's license, and you haven't fixed that in, say, 14 years. And you just never fix it, right? Like, even if you do license renewals, they ask you if there's anything you want changed, and you say, no, I just want to be done with this. Please let me go home now. Yeah, it's a bit of a hassle, because even if you do say something, and hypothetically, say someone did say something the last time they had a license renewal because they wanted something changed on their, license, whether it be height or eye color or hair color, whatever it was, say you wanted something changed, like, even if you say it, there's no guarantee that they'll change it, because it's at their discretion whether they change it or not. Some of them are like, they eyeball you, and they're like, no, you're definitely the same height you were when you were, 16. And it could be wildly inaccurate at the time. You could be like half a foot taller. It wouldn't matter to them. They're just there to get their paycheck. And I understand that. It is much like any other job. They're getting paid by the hour. And they don't get paid by the quality of their work, right? No. And that's fine. I can't really expect too much from them. I don't expect too much from the work that I do either. Yeah. The DMV is definitely a pain. If you've never been to the DMV in the USA, count your lucky stars. It's one of the worst government-run, I don't want to call it program, but I don't have a better word for it. Yeah. We still got... Oh, I hate this screen. I really do hate this screen with the flashing lights, because I never quite know where to look here. I don't even know what these lights do. They give you bonus points? You want to know the worst time to go to the DMV, based on my experience? Oh, that'd be a good topic. I can give it a guess. I want to say around lunchtime, right? When everyone wants to go and have their lunch for the day. What, more than lunchtime? Maybe towards the beginning of the year? No, not around lunchtime. Around closing time, like 5 p.m. I don't even know if they stay open till 5 p.m. Go ahead and tell me, Diana. I really couldn't tell you. It's been a couple years since I've been to the DMV, thankfully. The worst time to go to the DMV, leaving me in suspense here, is during the pandemic. Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah. Luckily, I did not have to go out too much during the pandemic. Like, I pretty much secluded myself for years before and after the pandemic, so that didn't really affect me too much. But I do know that all government agencies pretty much ground down to a complete and total halt. It was really bad in my state for some of the non-essential agencies. Like, there is a wildlife agency in my state, and they do sorts of, I guess you would call it like hunting. They do a lot of hunting stuff. Hyde was never much into the hunting scene, but yeah, his state was definitely a hunting state. And they just ground to a complete halt. Nothing happened. No one knew what was going on. They couldn't get any kind of information from them. And it was like that for a solid 6 months. We were moving from... Oh, we were moving. Mom had an expired ID. Couldn't get an apartment without a current ID. Ooh, that's tough. Been there. We literally waited in line outside in summer heat for 8 hours, 2 weeks before the move. That is very rough. I've never had to wait that long. Like, a lot of people say that waiting 2 or 3 hours in the DMV is too much. But depending on where you are, like the smaller DMV, smaller DMV departments, yeah, they tend to be a lot slower. It's very awful, but I have never waited that long. We did get the ID, I'm glad he did. So that's something at least. Isn't that saying something when you have to talk about departments from the government and saying, oh yeah, it's something at least. Like, it was horrible, but we actually got something in the end. I try not to talk too much about politics, but I don't think the DMV is politics. Like, everybody hates the DMV. And I've known some DMV workers, right? Like, it's not always on them. Sometimes it's the state's systems in place. So some states have really outdated technology, and they can't really do much about that. So they have to wait for these outdated computers practically running up on dial-up internet. And well, basically from the kind of setup that I'm streaming from. That's basically what they're using. And yeah, I can't blame them for being slow with that. Especially with something like printing an ID, like a federal ID. Some states, their IDs are not federally compliant, unfortunately. So there is that issue. It was only that long because they had reduced staff and the DMV was only open physically a couple days a week. Yeah, I do remember that. I had the same issue with the IRS. I don't really want to get into my issue with the IRS, but I did have a similar issue with the IRS not being physically staffed. They wanted something physical, and I had to offer them a physical document, as it were. And yeah, they weren't there, so when I sent it in, it took like an extra week to process this physical document that they themselves had asked for. And then they were very uppity about me not sending it in on time when I had sent it in on time. It's just that they weren't there physically to receive the document on time. Yeah, there was a lot of that during the pandemic, wasn't there? Jeez, yeah. Like, I didn't have to wait out in the heat like you did. No, luckily I could send that document from home, and the worst I got was a sternly worded letter from the IRS, which isn't great, it's not ideal, but at the same time, I'm not waiting out in the heat all day, 2 weeks beforehand. Yeah, that is a bit ridiculous, right? Like, I remember during the pandemic, all non-essential staff pretty much were told to go home, and every state or federal department they were running skeleton crews. Like post offices, you had 1 or 2 people there. And you kind of need post offices, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. You need a post office because mail is always going to be going out or coming in. That was a bad shot. My goodness, I'm extremely late. Hi, Grace. Good to see you. You're not late. It's just one of those streams, you know? Like, no one really... how do I say this? I don't really expect anyone to show up for these streams. They're here for anyone who ever wants to. Yeah? Like, I put out mostly video content. Because I like making video content. Video content allows me to be as creative as I want with content. Whereas streaming, it doesn't necessarily have the same kind of freedoms. So the idea behind my streams, I do them once a week, and usually no more. This week was a bit strange because I was testing something out, but I usually do them once a week and no more. And they're only here for the community. Any of you who want to watch, that's what they're here for. Because I do realize that unlike videos, these streams, you can actually ask questions. You can interact with me as much as you want. I really don't mind that. Feel free to ask questions or interact with me as much as you want. Otherwise, I'm just gonna read topics off of my list and ramble like an old man. Yeah, that sounds about right. Even more so during the pandemic. Yeah, things during the pandemic, they really ground to a halt. And I remember it was supposed to be, what, 2 weeks? And it ended up turning into, what, 8 months? Yeah. So... that hunting department in my state, they ended up, not fulfilling their obligations for wildlife conservation the year of the pandemic. And they were okay with that, right? Like, the state was fine. You don't have to fulfill your obligations. It's perfectly okay, right? Like, you don't have to do your job. That's fine. Hyde didn't mind, because, he's never been one for hunting. But there were a lot of people in my area, in my state, who were very upset with that. Because they like hunting. Yeah. So, yeah, there was a lot of that. And I remember when the post offices, when there was supposed to be like 2-day ground shipping, that ended up being, I don't know. I remember the longest time I had for 2-day ground shipping was probably like 2 weeks. I ordered something, and it was supposed to come in 2 days, and it didn't show up for like 2 weeks. And it wasn't on the end of the supplier. No, like they shipped it immediately. Despite the pandemic, they were working on their own skeleton crews, I guess. But they just, they were relying on the USPS, which I guess you shouldn't do during global supply chain issues. Yeah. Like I said, I do try to avoid the topic of politics, so I won't get too much into what I see as the negatives of global supply chain issues. I will just say that, yeah, I remember it was horrible, and it was very unfortunate, because what I ordered was, it wasn't essential, as it were. I know a lot of people probably ordered a lot of essential things, like they were looking forward to their insulin shipments or something, some kind of life-saving medicine, or medical intervention materials. Laugh at that, go ahead, yeah. And yeah, they just couldn't get it during the pandemic because the supply chains weren't there. And that really made me reconsider a lot of things about global supply chains. Like, these things I took for granted my whole life. And it wasn't until later that I thought to myself, maybe this isn't the best way to do things. Yeah. But it's fine, right? Like, we've gotten to the point of post-pandemic stability, in a sense. Like, some things are still... Like, we won't really feel the repercussions of some of the, effects or some of the events that went on for years to come. Like, people think the pandemic is over, all of the effects it's had are over. No, not necessarily true. The economic effects of this are going to be much longer. And we won't know for years to come. That was a very bad shot, wasn't it? Very unfortunate. Let's see if we can get a stylistic shot here on that 9 ball. Yeah, something like, a little bit on the lower end, right like that. Nope. No, we did not. Oh, we did. We did. We just didn't intend to do it like that. Do not give me credit for that shot. That shot was not what I intended. Yeah. The effects of the economic crises that were caused by the pandemic shutting down pretty much the global economy for months. We won't know that for probably years to come. And that's... I don't want to be, like, scary about that. It's not meant to be scary. But it is true that we will not know for years to come. And it had to happen, I think. Like, it had to happen. There was no other way around it. People were very panicked, and we had to calm that somehow. So I'm not blaming anyone who made choices to do that. No, no. YouTube, please do not block my channel. I'm just saying these have real repercussions, and we have yet to see them all. It was a lot like, a lot of people don't know this, but during the Great Depression, there was so much joblessness that the US actually invented, well, they were kind of like departments of, strange things. Like, there was a USGS department, so that would be the US Geological Society. So, they opened up a soil mapping department. And what they did was they paid people to go outside and take soil samples. They would just collect soil and characterize it. And then they would make maps all over the USA about these soil profiles. And you can find these online for free. Like, your taxpayer dollars, if you're in the USA, have paid for those. They're widely available. You're more than welcome to download them. In fact, there is a Google Maps overlay that you can download with all of these soil profiles. But I want you to consider that fact. They paid people something like 25 cents a day to just take soil samples and characterize soils in the USA. Yeah, there was that kind of joblessness. And we haven't seen anything quite like that yet. Taxes going to great use, I see. Well, here's the thing, Grace. I might be a little bit biased, because, well, you know, if you paid attention to what I've been in my life, it's very much within my wheelhouse. Soil sciences, you know. It's a very useful amount of information, right, to have those soil maps. both for agriculture and civil engineering purposes. So the USA, they really got that information out of steel. As far as I know, there are no other countries in the world with as good soil profile maps as the USA, which is quite amazing. Oh, I broke that shot glass. Which is quite amazing because that information, even if it's like 100 years old now, is invaluable. Because we have things like Manhattan. The island of Manhattan was pretty much all agricultural land for a good 50 to 100 years after it was settled. And there are still, to this day, a lot of agricultural pollutants from all of the manure that they used to spread on Manhattan. So the entire soil profile is absolutely polluted with these trace minerals and toxins, as it were. So you do not want to drink the groundwater in Manhattan, no. I see, thank you for educating me about the subject. No worries. Likely good for historical comparative studies of regions too, I'm sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The only issue with like historical comparative studies is we haven't done a program like that in 100 years since the Great Depression itself happened, because it would be too costly, right? We were basically using slave labor, and I know that's a bad word, but that's what it was at the time. We were very much underpaying the people who did these studies for us, and we're very much still reaping the benefits of it. Yeah. So we really have to go collect the data ourselves if we want to do comparative historical studies. And not to dox myself too much, but I have been involved in some of the studies involving historical comparisons of soil profiles and more modern profiles of soils. Yeah, it's actually very useful for civil engineering to know the amount of clay minerals in a soil, because you don't want to build your foundations on clay. It cracks very easily, it swells very easily when it gets moist. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Neither is building on sand. You ideally want a very thin layer of soil on a very thick layer of stable bedrock. But yeah, Hyde, he wasn't too much into the engineering side of things. He only dabbled in that. So if you want to know more about that, you're gonna have to look elsewhere. Ah, so rather a big gap. Very big gap. We're talking about 100 years now since we've done a countrywide project about soil profiles. Even the Google Maps data that you can overlay over like satellite images, it's still very much 100-year-old data. And they've just digitized it, and they've made topographical boundaries where there are topographical boundaries, or geological boundaries in the case of the USGS. So it's very useful, because you can also infer aquifers, so water-bearing strata, as it were, yeah. Water-bearing strata. It's also useful for radon-bearing strata, because if you think about it, the soil is essentially weathered bedrock. It is the topmost layer of weathered bedrock. So if you know what kind of soil profile you have, you also know the likely bedrock underneath it. Yeah. Unfortunate but common in anything related to science. How much should I say about that? some sciences are better funded than others. And it's understandable. Some sciences are more practical than others, right? Like, there are more engineering applications in some sciences than there are in others. My science of choice did not have a lot of practical applications. It had a few, but it was not very well funded. So I did not get to continue that too far, as it were. Very unfortunate, yeah. The amount of funding is unfortunately not proportionate to the amount of enthusiasm for the topic. Smiley face. Yeah, definitely smiley face. This is true, I'm in the social studies, I have to live with... Yeah. Social studies are very difficult for me. Like, in my college courses, I had a liberal arts program education, so I had to take I had to take social studies courses, and of course I took the more scientifically based ones, like psychology and sociology, and I always found them to be very difficult because humans have a lot of variables, right? Like, it's not like a physical system where there is one right way to do things. It's not like determining which crystals fall out of a melt first or second. That's very much physical, and that there are physical orders of things. It's just very determined, right? Humans are not so deterministic. They have things like free will, which make them very difficult to predict. So you have my sympathy there, Diana. You really do. Humans are very weird, yes. Yes, they are. That's exactly right, because they have free will, right? They don't make sense. In the most polite of ways, they do not make sense to me. They are very irrational creatures. Like, Aristotle said that humans were rational animals. And I disagree with that. I think humans were probably the most irrational creatures. We have all of these different values, which don't have anything to do with biological rationality in any sense of the way, or any sense of the word, right? Like, what is the most biologically rational thing? It's gotta be self-preservation. And if you're not working to preserve the self, then you're doing something highly irrational. And yet, if you look at human values throughout history, what do you see? You see things like monogamy, and you see things like self-sacrifice, and you see things like, I don't know, people jumping on grenades to save their fellow soldiers in a fox den. So, you get all of these self-sacrificing things, which are biologically irrational. And we tend to value those as humans, as a species. And I always found that fascinating. But I'm not a specialist in human studies, or the social sciences, as it were. I just have a passing interest. It just always fascinated me how irrational they are. Biology chads just keep winning. I don't know. I think biology chads have it just as tough. I really do. Like, organic chemistry is one of the most painful things I've ever gone through. And I do not regret not going... we scratched there and the 2-ball came back out of the pocket. I do not regret not going into biological sciences. Like, I know I just went on a spiel about how humans are one of the most complex systems there are. But all life really is. And I would rather just study non-living things, inanimate objects, and systems. There are so many fewer complexities there. Like, don't get me wrong. geological melts are still pretty complex. But it's not like I have to worry about drug interactions or any kind of organic chemistry. Yeah, it's much easier, I think, in the long term. You could make an argument that you could make an argument that actions made to benefit the entire group at the cost of oneself is rational. Oh. The evolution of altruism, as it is. The furthering of one's genes through tribalism. I think that's what you might be arguing. Well, you might not be arguing that specifically, but that is very much the same argument. I understand, and I've been there. I've read Dawkins. I don't know if I entirely buy that, though, right? Like, here's the thing, right? I think that in any system of life, every trait that is prominent, that means to say, not rare, not aberrant, not abhorrent. I'm not making judgments here, but anything that is widespread as a trait, it probably has an evolutionary advantage to it. It's an adaptive trait in some system somewhere or another. Whether it's the one that we're talking about or not, it's hard to say. Hyde will make no judgments there, other than to say that it very much depends on the environment instead of the trait. That's where people get evolution wrong all the time, right? They look at a trait in isolation, and they say that's a bad trait, that's a good trait, that's maladaptive, that's adaptive. That's not necessarily true. No, traits are very much dependent on the environment in which the individual with the trait is found. There is the old saying that you wouldn't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, right? That's wrong. Yeah, that's very wrong. Because of course a fish isn't going to climb a tree, there are no trees in the ocean. Precisely, I know that this is a common argument in anthropology. I'm not quite sure which argument we're making here. I might have gotten off topic there. Game theory, my beloved. Yes, game theory indeed. Yeah, I really didn't mean to get into an argument about, evolution here. But evolution was one of the topics that I most enjoyed studying. It's also the reason why I got into the field of study that I did end up getting into. I can go ahead and say this, because it's not doxing. I studied geology in university. So I have a bachelor's of science in geology, which is very different from a bachelor's of art in geology, which my university also offered. You know the difference between the bachelor's of art and the bachelor's of science in my university? It was the taking of a calculus course. That's the only difference, really. And organic chemistry. Okay, so there were two differences. Sue me. Oh, it's okay, I don't mind if you drop it. I tend to move from topic to topic pretty quickly. Yeah, here's the thing, right? Like, anyone in the sciences, they never really lost their childlike innocence, right? And they kept their, childhood curiosity, as it were. That is my experience. Like, people in sciences, they keep their childhood curiosity, and they always love learning new things. Unfortunately, that means they bounce between topic and topic pretty easily as well. Because their mind's always going like a mile a minute. Or, I'm sorry, a kilometer per hour. Yeah, that's probably closer, right? I've been outside of the academic side of sciences for a very long time now. So I do apologize if I do not use standard units here. Who could have guessed that the Soil Man was a geology major? Yeah, smiley face. Who could have guessed? I want you to know that the soil sciences course that I took, that was an elective. So I took that on my own initiative. Yeah. But you're right, you're right. Soil sciences, it's not quite geology, is it? Right? It's more agricultural. But I love geology so much that I ended up taking a lot of non-standard geology courses which were offered in the geology field, right? Yeah, the geology major, as it were. Because again, I had a liberal arts education, and all of the courses were separated into basically fields or majors. So soil sciences somehow ended up in geology, despite not entirely being geology. You would be surprised how much biology there is in the upper, say, couple centimeters of topsoil. Yeah. Like, you'd be surprised how much biology there is in mineralogy in general. Like, there are 17,000 or so common minerals on the surface of the Earth, and something like 70% of those have to be aided in precipitation by biological organisms. Usually bacterial mats, but that's still something, right? Like, most of geology is on the surface of this, on the surface of the Earth. Yeah, be very clear there. Most of geology is in fact related to biology. Tectonics? Hyde is no Chi-san. When you call yourself old, you're calling me old. Well, let's not get into the topic of my age. I will remind you that the story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was written about a Victorian-era man who was already in his 50s. So, canonically, my age is somewhere in the 188 range. Yeah. So, I'm not calling anyone here old, other than myself. Yeah. If you look at the, scale of the Earth, like, all human life is the blink of an eye. There was a, mural in my academic building for my major, and it ran the entire length of the hallway, and it was the entire geological time period for the Earth. All 4.54 billion years of it. And it wasn't until you got to the very end of the hallway that you would hit the Cenozoic at all. And the human aspect of that, so the period in which humans were alive, was something like the width of your thumb's last joint. So the last joint of your thumb. Something like 2 centimeters. That was the amount of time that all human life had existed. And if you know anything about human evolution, as the science goes, then you know that human evolution is, at most, a couple 100,000 years old when we're talking about, modern humans, like Homo sapiens. If you look at, Homo sapiens sapiens, which are contemporary humans, it's even shorter. We're talking like several thousand or several tens of thousands of years, but not quite 100,000 years. I never really enjoyed vertebrate evolution, so I didn't study that too much. I'm just telling you that all human life could exist in that couple centimeters of time. Yeah. That makes sense. Mushy muck that hasn't been transformed yet. Yeah, right? Like, soil... it has to undergo lithofaction. Lithofaction and diagenesis, which is the process of turning deposited and eroded soil into rock. That technically, well, not technically, that usually requires heat and pressure. And you can get enough heat and pressure just from burying it, but sometimes you have to enter into a subsiding plate kind of situation. Oh, that was a bad shot. Hyde streaming at a time where I'm able... Hey area. I always stream around this time. Well, maybe I'm a bit later than usual, right? Like, that might be a possibility. I might be a little bit later than usual. Today has been a strange day. But I'm glad to see you here, area. As I always say, no one is expected to be here. Like, I only stream to offer the ability to interact with me live. Otherwise, I would probably just be making videos for all of you. And I do enjoy very much interacting with all of you. But, yeah, I never really expect it, so it always catches me a little bit off guard that anyone ever shows up to my streams. And you are never expected to be here if you have other things to do, like you have to make dinner, or if you should be sleeping. By all means, do that. Like, I know a lot of you in the science fields probably aren't sleeping enough. Hyde definitely didn't. I remember I was working off of a diet of a pot of coffee per day on the lower end of my scale of coffee addiction. It got so bad that I would just buy instant coffee powder, you know, the freeze-dried stuff, and I would mix that with cold water from the water fountains whenever I needed it. And I would just never leave the academic building in which I had holed myself up in. Oh, it was awful. So if you're in that situation, I would highly recommend that you get the proper sleep that you need, because Hyde is not going anywhere. I am definitely going to be here for a while to come. Dinosaurs are super impressive for how long they lasted. They got hard nerfed though. Yeah. Like, if you look at modern theropods, that would be birds. Oh wow, I missed that shot entirely. Somehow I got the one ball. Do not clap for that. I did not deserve that. But yeah, modern theropods definitely got nerfed. There were two distinct clades of dinosaur. Well, when you're talking about cladistics, this is for you biology majors out there, there are only one clade of dinosaur, but there are also only one clade of vertebrates. Clades are very arbitrary in a way, but yeah. When you talk about dinosaurs, there are saurischians and there are ornithischians. Or ornithischians. Ornithischians? Yeah, ornithischians. And the saurischians are the lizard-hipped dinosaurs. And the lizard-hipped dinosaurs share a pelvis very similar to modern lizards, thus the name, saurischians. Saur, referring to reptilians. Yeah. And then there are the ornithischians, which refers to the same root as ornithol, which would be birds. And the ornithischians had hips very similar to modern-day birds. The irony of that is that the saurischians are the modern-day ancestors, yeah, not descendants, but ancestors of birds. So birds evolved from saurischians. So they independently, convergently, as it's called, evolved the same hip structure as the earlier ornithischian. No, the yeah, the bird-hip dinosaurs. So, convergent evolution is the development of the same trait independently, not from the same ancestry. Although, it's very much relative what the same ancestry is, right? I didn't study too much on the vertebrate side of things, so I can't tell you too much more about that. All I can tell you is that's the truth of it. The modern theropods are descended from ornithischian dinosaurs. And the Saurischian dinosaurs all went extinct. No, other way around. The ornithischian dinosaurs all went extinct, and the Saurischian dinosaurs developed the same traits as the ornithischian dinosaurs. Bird-hipped ones. Chicken, my beloved. Oh, yeah, that is my rural equivalent. Yeah. That's not entirely inaccurate. In college, I had to read Jack Horner's book, How to Build a Dinosaur. Right? I would highly recommend that to any budding paleontologist. I think right here would be good. Yeah, we got it. So I would highly recommend Jack Horner's book, How to Build a Dinosaur. It deals with how to edit the genome of modern birds to make them more like dinosaurs. That is how he foresees us reviving dinosaurs, not so much adding frog DNA to things we extract from, I don't know, preserved dino DNA from amber. Which is very unfortunate, because little baby dinosaurs. Yeah, chicken teeth. Yeah, he actually does talk about chicken teeth. As far as I know, Jack Horner did get pretty darn close. He did get chicken with teeth. And, if Erie is still here, there are Australian birds with teeth as well. Which frightens me, if I'm being honest. There is like something built bird of some sort, and it has sharp teeth. Only in Australia, right? Like, Australia is like a time capsule. Like, all of the strangest things in evolution occur in Australia. I don't know what that shot was. That shot was definitely bad. If you look at drop bears in Australia, they're particularly strange, evolutionarily speaking. Right? Like, drop bears, they only ever eat human flesh. Which is a strange adaptation, right? Because human flesh is toxic to most animals. It's very cool down under. It's great is a great isolated place for breeding the hell creatures. That's about right. Yeah. It's just the environment, isn't it? Right? Like, it's very hostile. Like, I'll tell you something interesting about Australia. You might not know this. Be careful of the chlamydia. I was talking about drop bears, not koalas in general. Oh yeah, Grace, you're Australian too, aren't you? Oh, sorry if that's a doxing fact. But yeah, I guess we have a few Australians here in the audience tonight. That one ball should have gone in. I assume that's because Australia has been relatively isolated. Geographical isolation, that's correct. For such a long time compared to other regions. Exactly. That's right, Grace. Geographical isolation is one of the major features in evolutionary biology. It's about speciation, right? Yeah. It's one of the few factors responsible for speciation. And a lot of people don't know this, but modern evolutionary theory owes a lot to do with mostly invertebrate paleontology, which is more my forte. Not so much the koalas or the drop bears, but yeah, the invertebrate stuff. There is this theory called punctuated equilibrium, right? It's also called evolution by jerks, and it is directly opposed to phylogenetic, blah blah blah, phylogenetic gradualism, which is the slow accumulation of different variances or different traits over a vast period of time, which is not supported necessarily by the geological record. So they had to come up with alternative theories in evolution for that. And one of them was punctuated equilibrium, which was proposed by Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge. And it was mostly Gould championing, I can't speak tonight, championing the theory. He was the kind of bulldog proposing it and fighting for it. And it was mostly Eldredge's studies on invertebrate paleontology that came up with it. And the concept behind punctuated equilibrium is that there is a long period of stasis for a species, and this species stasis is quickly interrupted by some kind of event, as it were, some kind of speciation event. Say there is a rapid isolation of a population of breeding individuals, and they quickly start having recessive traits and inbreeding, essentially, and they become their own species. Yeah, it's very fascinating. I would highly recommend looking into punctuated equilibrium if you don't know anything about evolution, as it were. Now, I do have my own qualms with Eldredge's data, as it were. His theory is okay, and I'm okay with the theory. It makes sense. It aligns with what I've seen in the geological data. But his data used to support his theory, I think it needs a re-examination. I'm sorry, Eldredge. I know you have an entire species. No, you have an entire genus of trilobites named after you. But, you need to look back into the research. Indeed, I'm down under. Good day. Indeed, I'm down under. Good day. Diana is a smart cookie. I think you mean biscuit, Grace. Diana is a smart biscuit, right? Yeah. Hyde is also very educated. Not really. I'd love to discuss about bioweapons, but that might be going too far. It's funny you should mention that. I was just discussing GMOs today elsewhere. I was talking about like how science would eventually create a jellyfish girl. Like, if we're gonna make cat girls, we're gonna make jellyfish girls first, right? Because we already have jellyfish tomatoes. And I was wondering, does a jellyfish gene inserted into tomato make it not vegetarian? That was my question of the day, and I never quite got an answer on it. But yeah, it's not going too far. Qualms. Now that's a word you don't hear very often. Yeah, I do have an anachronistic way of speaking. I do apologize for that. I am Victorian, after all. We come from a more prudish era. His age is showing when using the word qualms. That's right, that's right. Absolutely. Well, it's not where I thought the conversation was going. I'll tell you what, usually I would end stream about now, but we're gonna do one more game. And we'll talk a bit more about evolution. Because evolution very much is in my wheelhouse. Yeah. I do think, that modern evolutionary theory is wildly underestimated in how complex it is. Like, a lot of people don't realize how far we've moved from, say, Darwinian evolution, as it were. Like, there are now entire fields of invertebrate paleontology which have to do with hybridization studies instead of, say, genetic studies for reproduction, like Mendelian evolution through genetic and heredity, right? Yeah. I once worked with a rather old professor. Well, I say worked, it's more like, how should I say this? Like, I once picked the brain of an older professor, and his big deal was he saw hybridization in some species of fossilized echinoderms during the Mesozoic, as it were. And he had collected a large number of these, what he thought to be hybridized organisms. And as far as the science goes, there is no good reason to believe that hybridization leads to speciation, right? Like, you have to have some kind of geographical or sexual isolation, as it were. Those are two different concepts, right? Like, sexual isolation, or, yeah, sexual isolation is usually the result of physiological changes, so morphological ones. Morphological meaning shape. Where reproduction between individuals of different subspecies becomes impossible, as it were. The shapes are just wrong, right? Like, you're trying to throw a square peg down a triangular hole, as it were. It just doesn't work. But that also includes, like, hybridization studies, because not all organisms reproduce the way vertebrates do. And a lot of invertebrate paleontology discounted this hybridization theory, as it were, because they didn't think hybridization occurred in number or per scale to be speciologically significant. And it's only in, like, the last couple years where this has hit the mainstream. And it's very interesting stuff, because before this, it all relied on, like, well, there was this idea that different environments cause different morphologies, and that's true. The same species of bryozoan can look very different in different marine environments, depending on the amount of wave energy, right? So, high wave energy usually means that bryozoans encrust. They create this crusty kind of growth on things like substrate and shells. But in lower energy environments, they create these huge fanning structures. And it's very different. And I can't remember the name of that. Is that polymorphs? I think that might be polymorphism. It's been a while, but it's definitely interesting stuff. And in recent years, there's been some discussion that some polymorphism, or some suspected polymorphism in the fossil record, might actually be hybridization. Yeah. So the scientific paradigms have been changing rapidly as of late. If the cells of jellyfish have chloroplasts in the cell wall, it's a veggie. Agreed. Yes. No, not agreed. Hold on a second. Aren't there archaeans with cell walls and chloroplasts? Protozoa. There are protozoans with cell walls and chloroplasts. So I guess I have to disagree with that. Yeah, they're not well, what is a vegetable? Vegetables are very arbitrary. I'll have to get back to you on that one, Grace. Real question, do you think humans will evolve together as a species or branch into other subspecies? Oh, you're gonna make me answer that question? Grace, come on. You know I can't... When you're talking about human evolution, you cannot say the word subspecies. You cannot. You absolutely cannot. Because a lot of people think that subspecies means inferior. That's not true. Subspecies as a word means below species level designation. So you have to be very careful when you're talking about subspecies in humans. We don't want to have a Darwin here and talk about the races of cabbage and get cancelled by YouTube, okay? Yeah. I don't want to be cancelled by YouTube here, Grace. But yeah, if we were talking about the races of cabbages, I might get back to you on that. I will say, it was only in the 1800s that seafaring became popular enough for different ethnological isolated populations of the human species to come into contact with one another. So if we had remained isolated for another couple thousand years, I think there would have been subspecies level designations between human populations, but anything more, and I will not say, you know? Yeah, I will say that there are breeding populations between all known ethnic populations except for certain tribes which have remained isolated for potentially thousands of years. But for the most part, all ethnic populations of humans are capable of interbreeding. Therefore, by the most commonly accepted definition of species, all humans are the same species, and they will likely remain the same species. Yeah, because of that interpopulation breeding. If there had been greater geographical isolation, that might have changed, but that's not the case. So, yeah, the species is very much one. And cladistically, I think that's true too. Although, I haven't really looked at human clades too much. So do forgive me. Like, my simian clades are a bit, fuzzy. Yeah. I did say that, my vertebrate paleontology is pretty weak. So do forgive me. What do we have here? Aren't many hybrids often infertile? Anyways, yeah. A lot of hybrids are infertile, but that's only because they have chromosomal differences. So, like a horse and a donkey have a different number of chromosomes. That's why their offspring are infertile. But if you have an organism with hybridization and the same number of chromosomes, then fertility is usually retained. And even if there are different numbers of chromosomes, sometimes fertility is retained. It very much depends on the organism, and usually in invertebrates, the number of chromosomes does not matter. Yeah, so, yeah, there is that. What else do we have here? My bad, I meant subspecies and genetic variation. Yeah, I know. We're talking about speciation here. I'm just saying you have to be very careful with that, Grace. I've seen people cancelled for less. Discussing less, yes. Yeah. So Hyde has to be very careful because he does not want to be cancelled, you know? He just wants to play pool in Side Pocket, you know? Like, the irony is that, even if there were subspecies of humans, that doesn't mean inferiority or superiority, right? Like, traits do not exist in a vacuum. All traits are dependent on the environment. So there's no such thing as a superior or inferior subspecies of human. And that's true even if there were subspecies of human, which I am not saying there are. I do not have the academic backing to make such claims. I am just saying if that were true, then there would be no such thing as superior or inferior, right? Because those are maladaptive or adaptive traits. And in modern geological theory, or contemporary contemporary evolutionary theory, those things are very much dependent on environment. Not the individual, not the individual's traits. So yeah, I have to be very clear about that. Not trying to get me cancelled. I'm very happy you're not trying to get me cancelled. That's great. I recognize that you probably weren't trying to get me cancelled, but you do have to be very careful. Alternative answer: if we survive long enough to live on multiple planets, perhaps that would result in evolutionary differences. Yes, in the case where there were vast differences in locations and geographical isolations, and huge differences or variances in environments, you would very much likely find speciation, as it were. So yeah, if we ever colonized the stars, it would very much be likely that the human species would branch out into different subspecies, and whether or not those could interbreed would depend on, I guess, how long they were isolated for. Yeah. Purely theoretical. I am not saying anything else. Given enough time, of course, yes. Yes, the environment chooses the traits. Yes, absolutely, Grace. The environment is the key here. A lot of people misunderstand evolution, and they think that, because there are individual variances, that individuals with adaptive traits, say that there are a bunch of leaves high up in trees, and giraffes evolved to have very long necks. Some giraffes have longer necks than others. That would be an example of the environment picking the traits, because it could just as easily be the case that very small shrubs had the leaves, and then very short-necked giraffes would have the advantage because they don't have to stoop over with their necks, as it were, right? Yeah, so evolution very much is dictated by the environment, not the species, and not the individuals of the species. Yeah. That's one of the most common misconceptions about evolution, yeah. I learned a thing today. Neat. I'm glad you learned something, Diana. I wasn't really expecting to talk about evolution, as it were. But I'm glad that Grace or I could have helped you to learn something. I'm not sure which one of us. I'm going to go ahead and say that Grace probably helped you learn over me. Yeah, probably Grace. Sorry I have to go early. Thanks for coming, Grace. It was great to see you. Yeah. If you're already gone, I'm sorry for responding late. I got caught in a tangent there. Have a good day, Grace. Yeah. The most evolutionary successful species. No. If we're looking historically, humans have only existed for a couple 100,000 years. And we've almost driven ourselves to extinction. I don't think that's successful at all, Iria. I think that might be the opposite of success. I think we might be one of the least successful vertebrate species. Okay, here's the thing. If you look at the average geological time period life expectancy of vertebrate species, so any kind of complex organism with a spine, the average lifespan for the species is about 1 million years. And humans in their current state have existed for maybe 200,000 years. And we're pretty much close to our own extinction here. And we've been close to our own extinction for, I don't know, at least a couple decades. When did we invent nuclear fusion? That might be the case. Successful? No. We're not even the most capable of adapting our environments. Right? Like, I wanted to talk about something about Australia. So, I will talk about one thing on Australia before I end this stream. But then I will end this stream because I probably should not be talking more about evolution. Or evolutionary theory. Might get me into trouble. But there is a place in Australia called Sharks Bay, Australia. And in Sharks Bay, Australia, it is a hypersaline environment. Hypersaline marine environment. That means it's a very salty water ocean environment. Very few things can live in such hypersaline environments. But one of the oldest kind of organisms exists there in Sharks Bay, Australia, because this organism is typically, in other environments, eaten. It's eaten very easily. What an uplifting conversation for the early morning. Yeah, the human one, yes. I'm sorry, if you think there's human exceptionalism, yeah, I'm not a big fan of human exceptionalism. I'm not arrogant enough to believe that my species is better than any of the myriad of other existing or formerly existing species out there. Yeah. There have been millions of species out there. But yeah, in Sharks Bay, Australia, there is a species of, I guess it's blue-green algae. You can think of it like a bacterial mat. But they're called stromatolites, right? And they're basically this organism that creates mats of itself in colonies. And these mats collect detritus, usually in the form of sediment. And they create these striated rocks, or these layered rock structures. And they're pretty gross. But stromatolites are some of the earliest existences, well, the earliest recognizable existences of life on planet Earth, going about 4 billion years back. So in the fossil record, 4 billion years ago, we have these striated rocks, which are very consistent with modern-day stromatolites. Fascinating things. But, yeah. ever since the evolution of things like snails and gastropods, which eat like blue-green algae mats, it's very rare to find stromatolites, but they still exist. So you never quite know what evolution will throw your way. Sometimes you'll live 1,000,000 years, sometimes you'll live 4 billion. Yeah, so humans, I don't know. I think we've lived long past our life expectancy, but that's just my take on the matter. You don't think we're superior? Try this, Nuke Self. It very much depends on what you mean by superior. Again, it comes down to definitions, environments. Whether a trait is adaptive, which means beneficial, or maladaptive, which means a hindrance towards your reproduction, is very much dependent on your environment. So, fish that can climb trees, that's a trait that would be beneficial in environments with trees. Not so much in the deep ocean abyss where there are no trees. So you really can't say superior or inferior for any trait. It very much depends on the environment. Yeah. In a vacuum, there are no such things as superior or inferior. It would be very strange for such a thing to exist. Yeah. Oh no, that's not what I meant. Just a depressing topic. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I understand. No one likes to think about the end of their own species. And I really don't blame them for not wanting to think about it. I really don't like thinking about it either, right? Like, I go between this state of, really loving the human species for all of its irrationalities, like self-sacrifice and loyalty and all of those irrational traits that we seem to favor as a species that aren't found typically in other organisms, and then just being completely apathetic towards it. Like, yeah, the human species is going to die one day, just like pandas. Humans are like pandas, only there are 8 billion of us, and a couple thousand pandas. But one day we will be the pandas, and yeah, it is kind of sad to think that our species will stop existing one day, because there is this unbroken chain of descendants between humans and modern humans. So Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens sapiens. That would be the subspecies that we all are. It is very sad to think about one day that our species will no longer exist. Whether that be through, I don't know, evolution and speciation, so something that is no longer human, but was once human. And that might be the best thing we can hope for. That a new species arises from Homo sapiens sapiens. And I don't know what we're gonna call it, like maybe Homo sapiens ends, and you get something like Homo... I don't know. Homo wiser man, as it were. Yeah, because, yeah, that would be the Latin translation, right? Wise man. Come to think of it, Orang Pendek was translated as Wise Man of the Forest, too. I don't think Orang Pendek actually exists. That's more cryptozoology. We're not going into that. We will be pandas, so adopted by a smarter species which desperately tries to make us mate. If you've ever studied the mouse utopia experiments, I think we are pretty much in the pretty ones era. If you don't know what that is, bless your heart. I hope you never do. Because it is not an optimistic view of the future. But it is what I see. Yeah. It's very possible that if there is extraterrestrial life out there, maybe we will end up in some kind of, I don't know, galactic zoo of sorts, and we will be like breeding populations. And people will have to, or aliens will have to pay a breeding fee or a zoo fee for housing human species, like Americans have to pay for housing pandas. It's a ridiculous amount of money per year that American zoos have to pay China just to loan pandas from them. Because every panda in an American zoo belongs to China, as well as the babies that are born in an American zoo. And we have to pay them for those too. And somehow the conversation has gotten even more depressing. Sorry, Diana. Look, I didn't want to talk about these things. I just wanted to play, you know, pool. I had topics in my list here. Things like, self-love, and the evolutionary advantage of anger, and other emotions. But you're gonna have to wait for those, right? Those will have to be another week. Not this one. I am going to save these right here, right now. So we will get to those maybe next week. Maybe I'll have different topics. But this week, those will be it. And it looks like I kind of lagged there for a bit. Yeah, I might be lagging a little bit. It might be this capture card, but I also set the output settings on my OBS a little bit higher. Do let me know if that there is some kind of lag. I think there might be. Oh, so chat is the reason for the depression. I see how it is. It's a bit laggy, yeah. I will have to fix that for next week. I don't know which one is causing that. I changed too many settings. Yeah, but this is technically 1080p. I will fix that for next week. No, it's not your end. It was very much me messing with the settings. I should have said something up front. But yeah, I can see myself lagging now that I'm actually paying attention to myself. I hope that didn't affect the sound too much. I'm not listening in. I never listen in to my own recordings. But yeah, I can't do anything about changing the quality. I'll probably have to switch it back to 720p. This was very much an experiment in two different fronts. I don't know which one is causing me problems, but I will look into it over the week. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about the lower quality. I am streaming from a laptop from, I don't know, about 2018 with no GPU. The GPU is integrated. And I think it's an Intel something i7. Yeah. So that would be the CPU. The CPU is actually okay. It's just the GPU is integrated and very terrible. Which is why I have very limited streams and content in general. This used to be my laptop for doing taxes. Not so much for gaming. But the gaming laptop exploded on me. Literally. And no, I will not go further into that topic. I will say, it was a pleasure having you all here, but I think this is going to be it. Yeah. It was very much a pleasure. I am sorry for the lower quality and the lagginess. It is something that I am experimenting with. It's not the internet, it is very much the OBS and the computer. So, I love you all, and I will see you all next time. Thank you all for coming, but this is it for tonight. See you all later. Hyde, out.